Welcome to Author's Night with the East Hampton Library. This event is generously sponsored by CIB Private Wealth Management, the Hilaria and Alec Baldwin Foundation, Patty Kenner, Barbara and Stephen Heyman, Michelle Tortorelli and Tom Kearns, and Janet C. Ross. We are pleased to present ALAN STEINFELD being interviewed by Bill Boggs. Without further ado, I'd like to turn over the interview tonight to Bill Boggs.
Dino, thank you very much. My all-time favorite employee of the brilliant East Hampton Library. It's great to be working with you. You're a pleasure. Thank you. ALAN STEINFELD is one of the world's leading authorities on, I would say, unexplained phenomena, UFOs. His book is Making Contact, Preparing for the New Realities of Extraterrestrial Existence. And I've spent a good part of yesterday afternoon, a good part of this afternoon going through the book. I've got notes and things. And what I think as an interviewer here, my objective is, I hope that in the next 45 minutes, Alan, we can convince many people that the extraordinary is real.
Right.
Okay. So what do you want your book to accomplish?
Thank you. That's a great question. It's an honor to be interviewed by you and
But
your...
I haven't done it yet, Alan.
Well,
just
wait. Well, at least your history is important.
Hold it back.
Okay, I will. Thank you. I want people to know that this is a reality. This is not something people just have imagined and made up and think it's a good story. There is something going on in our skies. We don't know what it is, but it's out there. And the government is now slowly coming forward to tell us it's real. What do we do with that information is up to all of us. How do we explore the unknown? It is not something to be afraid of. These beings are not here to take over a world. They're here to awaken us to the greater possibility of who we are as human beings.
Right. Look, for years, we have heard that the government has aliens stored away.
Right.
I've often said that I've never interviewed a sitting president or a former president. One of the first questions I would ask would be, look, President Clinton or Obama or Trump, like the first couple of days in office, did someone come in and say to you, look, here's a story. We've got all this stuff in Roswell. We can't talk about it. Don't ever tell anybody. Or all these years, is it folklore?
No, it's not folklore.
UFOetic folklore.
It's changing, and it's changing. I'm going to show you a little clip here that will show you how much is changing. 2 months ago, and this is what happened in June, is that there was a release by the Senate Intelligence Committee about the reality of UFOs. So this is what 60 Minutes said about it.
What you're telling me is that UFOs, unidentified flying objects, are real.
Bill, I think we're beyond that already. The government has already stated for the record that they're real. I'm not telling you that. The United States government is telling you that.
That guy is an intelligence officer who looked into what is now being called UAPs.
Why did they change it to UAPs?
I'll tell you.
It was UFOs, now it's UAPs. It's going to take generations to get rid of the UFOs.
I know, but the reason they told you this, because the government is giving us hints about what...
Hints?
Hints.
The government gives hints?
This is a hint. It went from unidentified flying object to unexplained aerial phenomena. So basically, the only words that really changed was object to phenomena. And they're discovering this is not just things in the sky. There's other incidences that are happening on. There's telepathy, there's healing, there's a kind of synchronicity. People are having altered states. They're having these time-space distortions. So this is not just
12 o'clock at night after 5 hours of drinking.
Well,
go ahead.
Those aren't the only people who see this.
I know.
But there is something that is a phenomenal effect on human beings that is more than just objects, and the government really, I think they've held us back because they don't know how to explain this.
Well, if the government has this information, and it would appear that they and other governments do as well, what is the commonality of the thinking? If England has it, and if Thailand has it, and the United States, and maybe Canada has information, why would these governments be in coercion with cahoots with each other, not to let the public know. Why?
Well, I'll tell you, there's the main reason they give, they don't want the public to go into mass hysteria. I don't think that'll happen.
I don't either.
The other reason is there's some technology there that the military wants that they don't want to share.
That's a very good point.
And the other reason I think is primary is that the corporations, the multinational corporations that live off the petrodollar, the fossil fuels, don't want this technology out there. If these things are really appearing in our skies, and there's been over 100,000 reported cases in the last 10 years, then, and that's unreal, it's probably 100 times more than the reported cases. I've seen UFOs I never report. So these corporations don't want us to know that technology because they're not filling up their gas tank to get here. Imagine what that will do when we have that sort of energy. Does that make sense?
Another headline for the military industrial complex. I got a couple of questions.
Anything you want, because you're asking good questions. No, you're right. Why? What's the big deal that there's aliens here, right?
Right.
It upsets everything we know about reality. That's the fourth reason.
This comes from the book.
Yeah.
Right. These crafts, and I want to talk about encounters. We'll talk about crafts for a couple of minutes and then encounters. Right. These crafts are not here to invade our planet like War of the Worlds. That was a fine movie. The original one was really good. They're here to gently coax us into awakening. Let me repeat that. You maintain.
Yes.
These crafts are not here to invade our planet. They're here to gently coax us into awakening. Now, how can you arrive at that conclusion? What's your deduction?
My deduction is, and other people, this book is actually a collection of 11 different of the best authors in the field that I researched.
It's not just you writing, it's the top people in the world.
Exactly. Yeah. The conclusion is, let's say these things have just been here since 1947, which is when Roswell was.
Okay.
Why haven't they taken over? Why haven't they invaded? So they're not here. There's been no incident where there's been a plane or something that has mishap because they've seen these things. The only incident is that people don't know what to do with it. So they don't seem to be invading. They don't seem to be upsetting people. They're here to show us that they're present, but not to take over. There's a gentle awakening that has to happen to humanity. If they just show up on the classic White House lawn, people wouldn't know what to do with it. But if they come and go and move in, people slowly acclimate to the idea that there's something else here. And we are in that very moment of awakening to the fact, because when the government says, look, Bill, they've already said they're here, right? This is what the guy said just now. It changes our perspective on what we think the world is.
Do you think, and this may sound like a comedic question, it's not meant, but do you think that with QAnon and all the crazy theories, like you're getting vaccinated and chip is going inside you, that you now can make a better, more logical case for UFOs because there's so much more crazy.
Everything is so ridiculous. No, I think, we have to get used to the fact that we're not alone in the universe. Why is that such a hard concept? You quoted Arthur C. Clarke the other day. You said either the universe is full.
Either way,
we're life, or we're the only life in this universe, or the universe is full of life. Either way, that's phenomenal.
One of the things I picked up this afternoon, I thought this was fascinating. One of the writers in the book, makes a hypothesis that our human DNA is so complex that in a way he's saying that the universe seeded us as human beings.
That's the panspermia theory.
What an interesting theory that is.
Gary Nolan from the University of Las Vegas says that DNA is older than the Earth itself. So maybe that is the extraterrestrial. Maybe because it's too complex just to be here for the last 5.5 billion years that the Earth existed.
The DNA is that really woke me up when I read. And believe me, I was already awake. I was reading, but it really woke me up.
So maybe we are the extraterrestrials. Could that be? Because this is another level of that.
I've known a few.
Okay, but there's something here that might not be organic to Earth. I think human consciousness itself is different than all the other animals. We may be, and the book goes into this, we may be modified genetically from the evolving primates that have been slowly moving here on the Earth, and something may have been injected into our DNA to make us different. Look how different we are. We build houses, we have restaurants, we have, you know, and we're here from the beautiful Babats in East Hampton, I have to say. So, and, but we do things animals don't do. We are strange for Earth creatures. So that's another hypothesis. I'm just throwing out a lot of hypotheses.
Well, what I like, see, honestly, what I've always tried to person be an open-minded person. I don't approach something that can't possibly be. And my hypothesis here is to try to convince people that the extraordinary actually could be real. Edgar Mitchell, Apollo, what was the Apollo 14 astronaut, about the whole subject we're talking about now. This is a US astronaut, said, okay, enough is enough. What did he mean?
First, I want to tell you, he grew up in Rodwell, New Mexico, Edgar Mitchell. People don't know that.
No, I didn't.
And when he came back from the moon, a lot of the locals said, you know, there was a craft that landed here and there was these bodies that were recovered.
Yeah.
And if you want to know about this, go to the FBI vault. There's a memo called the Guy Huddle memo from—
Where is the vault?
The vault online, the FBI vault.
I thought you had to like open
No, there's a vault,
which
is the FBI website.
Excellent.
And you look up UFOs. There's maybe not hundreds, but there's most looked at documents talk about these ships that crashed in New Mexico.
Right.
So Edgar Mitchell said, yeah, let's open up the truth. Why, if the government knows something, why are they hiding us from us?
I don't, you know, that's the thing that has always fascinated me. That's the one thing that would make me doubt is, okay, but why? Would anybody here like go run screaming in the night if there actually was some further proof? Well, maybe he would, but some further further proof that there were UFOs.
The idea is, the other factor besides the multinational corporations, that we have to understand reality in a small box. We're told reality is this big, and when someone tells you it's not that suddenly then what we think is true is different. What we believe, our world shifts. It's a paradigm clash. So what we thought was reality is not reality, and that changes everything for us.
I think it might be, we have a woman here, actually it happens to be my beloved girlfriend, significant other, Jane Rothschild, who lived out there in New Mexico. And I want her to slide in.
I want her to talk.
No, I'll get out.
Oh, okay.
I'll go for a walk.
Well,
she talks, you know, I'll be back.
I think it's important to talk to people who've had experiences.
And that's why.
Thank you.
It's not just like I want my girlfriend.
It's okay if you do, Bill. It's okay. So Jane, join us, because I think experiencers have an answer for this. And would you tell us your experience? Because
I will.
Okay, please.
Because I always, thought I poo-pooed UFOs until I saw one.
What happened?
I was living in New Mexico from 1985 to 1997. And one evening, probably in the mid-90s, I was driving up to Taos. Oh, look at you.
Yeah, tell me.
I won't look at you.
That's okay.
Okay. I was driving up to Taos, and just as I was approaching the town, which is a small town, quite honestly, and there's no cars, dark as could be, no lights. In the distance was a bright green light that caught my eye and came toward the windshield, toward me so fast. I mean, faster than one could, than possible. Came right up to the windshield.
From what angle?
From 45 degrees. 16 degrees.
And what time of day was it?
Night. It was night. It was dark.
Okay.
It zoomed right toward me. I was in such shock, and it disappeared. It took off. It went straight up and it was gone. And I happened to be approaching a restaurant that was on a hill, which is like right before you come into Taos. I drove up the driveway of the restaurant, and I went in trembling. And the hostess said, "Can I help you?" I said, "I am in shock. I just saw a UFO." And she said, "Oh, that happens here all the time." And I was like, "You have to be kidding." She said, No, it happens. We're so used to people coming in and telling us that." So I sat down, I calmed myself, and I continued on because I was spending the weekend in Taos.
But did that change your life at all, that sighting? Because
That's a very good point.
I think it does change people when they have a sighting. Did it change you?
You know, I think living in New Mexico changed me,
Mhm.
and that was part of it. It just opened me up to a belief of there's more than being a New York City girl. Just the possibility that it exists, I now believe it. And then I have another experience.
Please
I can
tell,
share.
yes, share the other
A
experience.
few years later, I was going to see a show on Broadway, and I happened to be sitting next to a man, and you chat when you're in waiting for the show to start. Where are you from? Da, 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 da. He was from Roswell.
Mhm.
And I said, that's so amazing. I lived in New Mexico for 12 years. And I asked him about what did he think about the news about a spaceship crashing and that there were bodies.
Yeah.
And he said to me, it's absolutely true. He was the editor of the Roswell newspaper. And he said, I know for a fact they took the bodies out. They put them somewhere, but he said it's 100% happened.
Mhm.
That changed me.
Thank you, because it is a reality. They brought those bodies to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, actually, from New Mexico. And there's a big cover-up. They said, first in the Roswell paper, they said, oh yeah, something landed, flying saucer crashes outside of Roswell. And the next day they said, no, it wasn't a flying, it was a weather balloon. And they're sticking to the weather balloon story. And the Air Force has been in a ridicule campaign since the 40s
Really?
to say anyone who's seen a UFO must be crazy. And this has been
But that has changed because look at.
it's changed now because, yes.
It was April 2020
Yes.
when two of our best jets were shot off a carrier
Right.
to investigate something and explain what happened. This was like a year and a half ago.
That was a year and a half ago, but that goes back to the Nimitz. The Nimitz was an aircraft carrier outside of San Diego, and they saw this thing in the sky, and these jet pilots, Fravor, Dr. David Fravor, or not the pilot Fravor, followed this thing, locked it in a radar, and it was in the shape of a tic tac. They call it a tic tac because it was white and it had no propulsion, and it would zoom up 80,000 miles and then down to the surface of the water, and then it was gone.
Right.
So that started to freak people out. They don't know what to do with it. They started to report it, and that was actually repressed for a long time. The footage from the Nimitz, and then they have footage the last, I don't know, 50 years. That guy Elizondo says there's footage that would blow you away, but right now they're not ready to release it because are we ready to change our ideas of reality?
Well, that's, again.
This is really what the book is about.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very
It was
much.
my pleasure.
Jane, that was so good because it's the experiencers that really count here, because the more people
Thank you.
come forward and share their experiences, the more we can understand there's a real reality to it.
Okay, just to remind you all,
Yeah.
we're talking to the Alan Steinfeld, the author of Making Contact, Preparing for the New Realities of Extraterrestrial Existence.
Right.
Let's get into some
Yeah.
specific stories that you don't consider too outlandish. There
Okay.
are truly outlandish stories,
There are.
but specific stories of contact, because the contacts
Mhm.
written about by the many writers in the book are not just looking at like gray shaped people with large heads, although some of them are.
Yeah.
Others are just a life force or a feeling. Tell us about the variety of contacts. Just a few.
I'll tell you the
and
one that's
some stories.
the one that kicks it off is 1961, the story of Betty and Barney Hill. And they're driving from Montreal to Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And they see a light in the sky. They stop, they pull over. Barney takes out his binoculars. He said it looks weird. They get back in their car and they go down the road, and 4 hours of time are missing. They arrive in Portsmouth.
4 hours of time are missing.
4 hours. They arrive at home in Portsmouth, and it's 4 hours later than it should have been. They don't know what happened. There's no idea, but they start to have nightmares and weird traumatic experiences. Finally, they go to a hypnotherapist who would just hypnotize people who had combat fatigue, trauma from war. This guy, Benjamin Simon, this is 1961. And Simon says these people are more traumatized than anyone who's seen hard combat. So what went on? They were just in a car. Finally, he hypnotized them and he saw them being taken aboard by these creatures with the big eyes and examined.
So this is what they were saying under hypnosis?
Under hypnosis.
Right.
And they were able to relive the trauma and have some completion because they saw what happened during that time. Betty had a ripped dress, Barney had his shoes scuffed, but they had these nightmares that kept them like, you know, traumatized until they could work it out. So that was actually, there's a plaque in New Hampshire on the side of the road outside of Lincoln, New Hampshire, saying this is where Betty and Barney Hill were abducted on September 19th, 1961.
Wow,
abducted. And they were an interracial couple. They didn't want news. They wanted to stay out of the news. And they made headlines. And that's one case.
I have a couple more questions about that, but give us another, what you consider as a credible story. When I say credible, what I mean by that is some sense that there's some verification that the person is whacked out one night.
I'll tell you one of my favorites.
Go ahead.
Snowflake, Arizona. There's a loggers there, and they see a light in the forest, and they stop. And this one guy, Travis Walton, I'm sure you've heard of him, runs out of the truck towards this light, and he is blasted and knocked, maybe dead, unconscious. The crew, you know, goes away because they think this light is after them next, but they say, we can't leave Travis there. They go back to look for him and he's not there. So they don't know what to do. And the craft isn't there. That light is not there. And so they go to the sheriff's office. The sheriff thinks they probably killed this guy and just made this UFO story up.
Whoa.
But anyway, they send out search parties. Hundreds of people searching through the woods for Travis Walton. They can't find him. He appears 5 days later on the side of the road, and he tells the story of how he was taken.
The story
was that not only was he shot out, he thinks it was an accident. This being killed him, and the beings on board revived him. It took 5 days, and then he only remembers a half hour of this. There's a movie called Fire in the Sky, which is taken from this whole story. But the fact that makes it verifiable is that they couldn't find him for 5 days after this thing.
Wow.
And you know, there's all this drama about these people being accused of having killed him. He shows up the side of the road by a telephone booth and says, I'm back. And he, you know, they pick him up and say, what happens? And he only remembers a half hour of being on board the ship. You can look at the book Fire in the Sky by Travis Walton. That is one of the most documented cases, and there's a documentary about that. So that's another one, but this happens a lot.
Why, in terms of the reporting, why are there so many different descriptions of alien beings?
Well,
large heads, great bodies, that's like the little arms, that's a familiar one, but there are other descriptions, and then there are some with no body.
And right, some are just energy. Well, one reason is that maybe is that there's more than one race visiting us, right?
Sure.
So if there's more than one race, they're not just little grays. They might be etheric. They might be blue beings. And for me, my experience, if you want to know, they actually appeared in a dream-like state. And I woke up with a mark on the back of my leg. So I thought it was a dream. It appeared like a dream, these beings coming to me. And then I woke up the next day. I was camping out. I woke up the next day with a 4-pronged puncture mark. And me and my girlfriend said it felt like we were suspended in time. So that was kind of weird. And I write about this in the book, but there's many types of beings visiting us, and there's many levels of consciousness here. So some of them are after our DNA, and there's a whole reason people think they're after our DNA, especially for the little grays. This might be a little too out there. These little grays, some people say, have reached the end of their evolution. They became all mental. They lost their passion, their creative drive, their empathy, and all the things that make us human, our emotion. And they wanted to genetically take some of our DNA to make a hybrid race.
See, I think now somehow
that's a little
that's
a little too much for our audience.
Let's talk about how people have been affected by encounters. And fascinated again to read in the book, making contact here, about the theory that they're able to plug into our consciousness,
Yeah.
and that people's consciousness and knowledge is changed. Like one woman, after an encounter, was able to display talent and knowledge that she had absolutely previously had no idea that she had within her.
Right. So some people do talk about telepathy
Yeah.
being increased because they're getting these telepathic downloads. And there was a bunch of artists they call the Allagash Four. They went for a camping trip up in northern Maine.
Yeah,
They had this experience. And do you know about those guys?
no,
They came back and their artistic talent became much more developed, much more complex. So people are affected as if they're evolving in awareness, evolving a deeper sense of themselves. This is what a lot of people have. It's an upgrade to our human facility. We're somehow able to be more compassionate, be more creative, more loving, more expansive. This seems to be the side effect of many encounters. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's how people's lives.
another
Yeah.
sort of official question.
Yeah.
This kind of complicated philosophy here. You're maintaining through the book and through what people are saying in the book, life is not an accident of creation, as our current worldview implies. Rather, it's an emergent property of creation itself. Let me repeat that.
Right.
Life is not an accident of creation, as is our current worldview. Rather, it's an emergent property of creation itself.
Right. So we've been brought up with the idea that, there was a little spark that created life in these little mud puddles, and there was this simple DNA and it slowly became complex humans. But what if DNA, life is an innate factor of creation? What if we're not an accident? What if life is abundant throughout the universe? It's not dependent on some chance mutation. Darwin says we evolved through a chance mutation. I'm saying life is the essence of creation itself. It's why creation exists, without getting religious. But there's something about life, what we are as living beings, that emerges from the ethers. Does that make sense?
It's difficult. I think it's difficult to comprehend that. I think there are some things that, for almost all brains, are impossible to truly comprehend. For example, and maybe it would have served better to talk about this at the beginning.
Right.
It's impossible to fully understand how large the universe is.
Mm-hmm.
You can hear miles and light years and everything like that, but if you really, next time it's a beautiful dark night, if your neighborhood is not overlit, right, go out, look at the sky, and try to imagine an end to it, because there is no end to it.
There isn't, right. And maybe we're as infinite as creation itself. Maybe there's a part of us that is connected to these stars. There's a great quote I put in this book by Rilke. He says, "A billion stars go spinning through the night, blazing high above your head. But in you is the presence that will be when all the stars are dead." Maybe there's a non-local essence to our human beingness. Maybe we transcend the body. This is what a lot of near-death studies, out-of-body studies, remote viewing, which I teach.
That's a phenomenon.
Right.
Remote viewing is, and this has been proven scientifically, proved it at Duke University.
Right.
There were some people who were they had a study at Duke with people who could do remote viewing, and they were able to tell what was happening in another room by astral projecting.
Right. Well, sort of sending I teach remote viewing, but I learned it from a guy who taught it to the CIA. The CIA sponsored.
They have viewers.
They have viewers for 20 years. They sponsored the Stanford Research Institute on how to project their consciousness to other locales, meaning that who we are is not local to your body. We think the brain generates awareness, but what if the awareness was before the brain? So let's say it's like a computer. You have the hardware, that's the brain. You have the software, which is like your personality. But what makes that work? It's the person, it's consciousness. The consciousness makes the hardware and software work. Without someone at the keyboard, You just sit there. So does that make sense to you?
You're a very interesting man.
No, but
No, you are a very, very, very interesting guy. I mean that.
I know,
You're
thank you, but doesn't that make sense?
Sure.
If you didn't have consciousness, Bill, you just sit there like a meat and potatoes there.
Well, that happens to me sometimes. But anyway, do we have, Dino at the library, do we have any questions? It would be great to, and we may have some questions here.
We might have some questions, but I just want to read
Go
another
ahead.
little part here that, because the book is called Preparing for the New Realities of Extraterrestrial
Yes.
Existence. First of all, another reason the government isn't coming forward is that they don't know how to explain this. There seems to be
Well, they
another.
should hire you because you seem to know how
I
to explain
don't,
it.
I think it works on quantum physics theory that, of non-locality, that these things can be in superposition, about quantum physics. So they're not using Newtonian
second.
science.
You're asking me if I know about quantum physics?
I am asking you.
No, that's why you're my new friend.
Okay.
Because with you, I can understand these
Well,
things.
I'm going to teach you remote viewing too, okay?
Good.
So one of the reasons, besides all the others we mentioned, is that the government really doesn't know how to explain this phenomenon. There's something out there. They don't know what it is. This is why people in this movement, and it's called the Making Contact Movement, and there's a big seminar happening this week. Look up makingcontact.com. They want to make this a people's movement. We need to march on Washington. We need to demand Senate hearings so they can.
That's true. That'd be good.
We need to get them to pull out the hardware, the bodies, everything they've been covering up since Roswell, since 1947, and have an open discussion about this.
Yeah.
Put it out on
Well,
the table.
look, the government, it seems to be
Yeah.
moving closer to doing something like that.
They are,
Yeah,
but
right.
very slowly.
But another question
Yeah.
that came out, actually a question that you gave to me, is, why do scientists have such a difficult time accepting this?
Well, you look at someone like Neil deGrasse Tyson, brilliant scientist. They show him the video from the Nimitz. He goes, well, that's probably an artifact on the radar. Scientists are very attached to their ideas about what the world is.
And provable.
And provable, but they're attached to their belief system. It's there's a book by Thomas Kuhn who wrote Theories in Scientific Revolution. He says, science evolves one funeral at a time, actually.
Whoa.
That's because scientist says, this is how the world is, and there's nothing that's going to change my idea. So science, they believe in their belief system. They go beyond the fact that about provability. Bud Hopkins says the job of science is to investigate the unexplained,
Right.
not to explain the
And then
uninvestigated.
and then prove it.
But scientists we know explain the uninvestigated. So you get people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, hate to single him out, but he's really
No, that's good.
ridiculed the UFO movement, saying there's nothing to it. Why don't people with cell phones come along and have pictures? Because this is not just happening in this reality, like Jane said. It's like, if this happens in a slightly altered state. So go ahead.
Well, I have an idea here,
Right.
and I hope someone's listening from the East Hampton Library or
Yeah.
somebody could theoretically underwrite this. I think a debate
Mhm.
between you
Okay.
and Neil deGrasse Tyson
I'd love that.
would be, wouldn't you go?
Yes.
And not just me, but I'm going to bring out some of the experts who I have.
Just you two
Okay.
on stage debating that. I'd be in the front row. Well,
I-
maybe I could moderate it.
No, but
enough
I
about
would like to
me.
bring people like Linda Moulton Howe, who's been investigating cattle mutilations.
What?
There's this whole thing out in Colorado, in New Mexico. There have been cows that have been drained of blood that have been seen in the vicinity of UFOs, and they think they're using some of that
Really?
cow DNA for what I was talking about, the hybrid program. That's one theory. So there's so much to this. There's so many moving parts. We've just skimmed the surface here, but I can talk about John Mack.
Yeah, do that.
John Mack didn't believe any of this. He thought everyone was crazy until he started talking to people who had experiences. He happened to be a professor of psychiatry at Harvard University. He was a clinical psychiatrist, and he said, these people aren't crazy. They're having a real experience. So he's one of the key figures, even though he died 20 years ago. I put an essay that was never published before in this book,
Right.
because he validates people's experience. He says, no, there's something real to this, and we have to validate anything you tell me that you experience? How can I doubt your experience? How can I doubt your passion and the intensity of what you're saying is real to you?
Well, but right now, honestly, there, I would have to say, right now, we're living in a culture where people are saying all manner of things that aren't true.
I know, but,
And they have to be doubted. We can't, just because somebody
but what
says
about experience? So what a lot of people say.
I will not question experience.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Mack interviewed people who had experience, not people who make things up because they heard it on the internet.
Right.
And there was no internet then. So there's a lot of people who would validate, like Grant Cameron has made, he's written an essay in this book. He says, every U.S. president had some sort of interaction with a UFO. Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, Carter, I know. Reagan did.
And then they go once they're elected, and then they're shut out by the military, and they say no,
Fascinating.
Really
Really
on a need-to-know basis. So right now, something's cracking with inside government. The people are coming forward and saying, yes, there's something real to this.
Getting a phone call from somebody
from outer space.
Oh,
yeah.
I've never seen that area code.
So anyway, something.
All righty, there you go. There he is.
Something is cracking with inside government that wants this information out there. And Bill,
You are great.
this
guy's great.
You are part of the disclosure. It's called disclosure.
Yeah.
Let's see if there's any other questions. Oh, we have,
Here we have a question.
question from.
We have a question. Let's
Here, you can
see.
read this.
A good theory is
An
one that
attendee
is,
asks, a good theory is
Okay.
one
We can read it.
falsifiable.
you read it, go ahead.
A good theory is one that is falsifiable, like Newton's laws, like Einstein's theories. How are UAP's missions falsifiable?
Falsifiable.
What does that mean, you think?
Well, I think it means it can disprove the law. Honestly, I can't answer that.
Well,
Excuse me?
how do we make it false?
How do we make it
Well, there's
false?
objects that are defying the laws of gravity that are moving in and out of our atmosphere, and they are true to people. These are realities that are showing up on screen, and they're proven to be true. There's let's call it, well, when I talked about quantum physics, there's something called superposition in quantum physics. There's wave particle. These objects seem to possess a quantum approach to the way they're moving. They're not using Newton's second law of thermodynamics, which means a power on one side pushes you this way. We're still using that. It was developed in the 1700s, and we're still using our jets and cars to move along those laws. But there's something else happening that these UAPs are using that are not propelled.
Do we have any more questions? Otherwise, I think we're going to wrap it up, but we're going to
All
wrap it up with a couple of important things.
Okay, good. Let me see. I mean, I hope I just made people think that there is a reality. The government is coming forward and saying this is real, and they're saying we don't know what it is. So why don't we all just investigate it? Instead of being afraid of what's out there, let's go with an adventure into the unknown. Something is out there. We don't know what it is. Let's investigate.
Absolutely.
That is all I'm saying here.
Absolutely.
And
no,
Yeah.
I look at the beginning of the show. I said we wanted the book. Making Contact is essentially trying to convince us that the extraordinary is acceptable, is understandable. You've done a brilliant job with the book. The book is not just written by Alan.
Yeah.
The book is essentially essays of the leaders in the field. I don't know if we can actually, do you want to try something? We're in Babat's restaurant right now, and really it's a lovely place.
It is.
And we hope that you'll come back and visit Babat's. It's very nice to keep the place open for us here.
Yes, and I'm very happy.
And actually, we had dinner.
I know, it's very nice to have a dinner, and it was a good meal too.
Oh, very good.
No, but Bill, are you convinced when you say the extraordinary, like what the woman who came up and told her experience? That's an extraordinary experience. Imagine if everyone was open and having these kinds of experiences, because they are coming in increasing numbers. And sightings are up worldwide, not just in the US. I talked to a UFOologist in China, in Italy, in France, in Australia. This is happening, and we need to wake up to the fact that we're
good.
not alone.
Alan, why don't let's wrap it up by telling people where, because we're right on time to wrap at 45 minutes.
Yes.
Where they can see you, your YouTube channel, it's important that they can subscribe. You've got
Right.
hundreds of thousands of subscribers.
I'm
Go
talking
ahead.
about this every day on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/New Realities. New Realities is also the name of the show I do on Manhattan Cable. It's sort of been the kind of moniker I've used to explore these realms. But every day on YouTube, practically, I'm interviewing someone who's either seen a sighting or a government insider or people just talking about these
Yeah.
extraordinary realities. And there is a spiritual component to this.
And
because
what is the YouTube channel again?
youtube.com/New Realities, New Realities.
New Reality.
And you can also buy this book on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble. You can get it at your Barnes & Noble store.
We're making
and-
contact. Look, we're making contact.
I didn't know you were that funny. Bill, you should.
I know,
But
I know.
I just want to say one more thing. When you
Funny? Listen, this is my book. It's a funny book.
Wait, let's see your book. No, let's show your book because I want to do a little promo for
I'm
you.
going to sign that book for you, by the way.
Spike, the Wonder
That's
Dog.
right.
This is making contact, Bill. I want to make contact with Spike.
Well, Spike made, honestly, the dog narrated the story to me. My book, I was signing last night, near you, as a matter of fact.
Right.
The Adventures of Spike the Wonder Dog, actually, is an interesting mental thing.
Mhm.
I had a dog, the dog got killed a long time ago, and the dog was a big star on my show in North Carolina.
I didn't
And I
know
thought,
that.
what if the dog had come to New York when I came to New York to do a show
Mhm.
and became a big star on New York television?
Mhm.
Here's the only thing I want to report. I sat down to write, and instantly a voice of the dog that I had never written in, that I had never done any comedy in or anything came through me, meaning every writer who's writing fiction wants to have the voice of the central character.
Right.
So magical things can happen if you keep your mind open to letting them happen.
Well, that's what we're here to do.
I know
We're
that.
here to have some new realities.
Yeah.
We're here to have a spiritual awakening. You know, this is about the spirit coming forward and saying there's more to the human being than I've been told. There's more to who we are. There's more to reality. I think it's much vaster than we've been educated to believe. Our politics, our government, our religions, we've been dumbed down. And the idea about this book is to open us up to something greater than we've been told. And that's what making contact, it's making contact with ourselves, each other, and the universe.
This will be available on your YouTube channel. I mean,
Yeah.
the show.
Yes.
It's honestly something you can watch and listen to twice. You're wonderful, Alan.
And read the book because I make a lot of points we aren't able to come to cover here. But there's a guy who's had an experience with a ET for 38 years, Darryl Anka. He writes about his story.
It's in the book.
It's right
Alan,
here.
thank you, man.
Bill, you
You're
are,
terrific. No, you. You're terrific.
you are the professional.
You are.
I would like to have the reputation you have. I think
I'm not
that's
so
good.
sure you want my reputation. All right, say goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you. I'm here
Dino.
with
Thank you very
Bye.
much.
Thank you,
Bye,
Babat.
Babat.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.
East Hampton Library. Thank
Excellent.
you all for watching and get the book, Start Making Contact.
Well done.
Okay.
Thanks, folks.